Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and here with me is my co host, Jussara Korngold. Jussara is the Secretary General of the International Spiritist Council and former President and current Vice President of the United States Spiritist Federation. For the past 30 years, Jussara Korngold has been volunteering as a counselor in fraternal conversations in several Spiritist institutions. Thank you so much for joining us today. The Psychology and Spirituality program is sponsored by several organizations such as AMI Brasil, the United States Spiritist Federation, TV Mansão do Caminho, and the International Spiritist Council. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to check out more information, please come to the www.spiritist.us channel. If today's topic of interest for you, we would like to recommend several books that are based on this topic, and I'm going to show them now. Please see those three books. They're lovely books: Finding Peace and Health, Wake Up and Be Happy, and The Conscious Being. If you want to acquire those books, you can go to Leal Publisher Spiritist Books at www.lealpublisher.com. The other sites that you see here also have books that you may be interested as well. But thank you. Thank you for this. And I would like to say hello to Jussara and welcome to this conversation.
Hello, Marcia. I'm so happy to be here today again. And happiness is the topic of our conversation. So let's make it happen, right? Hello, everyone. And it's good to be back. And it's good to know that you are here with us. And we have been receiving a wonderful feedback and generous comments. So keep on tuning in our episodes.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. But if you're here and you tuned into today's episode, The Pursuit of Happiness, you may come with the first question of the day. What is happiness? Why is it important to discuss it? And I thought, Jussara, you, with your role, in your role as the Vice President of the United States Spiritist Federation, you may want to talk a little bit about happiness in the context of the US of A. How about that?
Yes, absolutely. Because when we are talking about happiness, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and we know that this is one of the most famous phrases in the United States Declaration of Independence, and one of the most influential sentences in the history of the English language. So we can say that this statement of the necessity of happiness was formally introduced in 1776 by Thomas Jefferson when he penned the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It is beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, no, this is beautiful, beautiful, and I think it's important for us to, as we talk today in the next several minutes about happiness, to see how important it is, and we're thinking in the language of our sacred selves. But this is real. This is here. This is now. It's a completely embedded in the history of the country that we both reside in. But beyond that, I think it's important to understand that the concept of happiness goes far and away, and there's a breadth of discussions that we can touch today. So I would like to do this, Jussara, if you don't mind, and I would like to start perhaps going through the idea that the definition, right, of what um, happiness is, the reference about it in itself, we can find in Proverbs. So in Proverbs, we can see that happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. So I just think it's very, very nice to put that as the baseline for what we're thinking about happiness. On one hand, the Declaration of Independence. On the other hand, we get all the way from Proverbs the idea of happiness and man. What we need to attain happiness. But as I mentioned before, we dabbled here and there in the various books by Joanna de Angelis, and specifically, if you look into one of them, I believe it was the conscious being. She starts by letting us know that the meaning of life is centered on the search for and in finding of happiness. So I think this is very important for us, right, Josada? We talked about this many, many times, where it's not just the trivial, oh, today we're going to talk about this and that. No, this is at the center. It's the cornerstone of what we are, is our pursuit of happiness. And I believe this is considered one of the most frequent existential challenges of all times. This is what plagues us. We want to be happy. So tell us a little bit, Josada, from what you know about happiness. How does it differ, perhaps, based on who you are, your gender, where you're from? What are some additional components for that idea of saying, I am happy?
Yeah, it's interesting, Marcia, because as you said, um, there are so many angles that we can analyze happiness,
Mhm.
and according to our understanding of life, about how we were brought up, about our beliefs. For instance, when we are talking about the Buddhist teachings, uh,
Mhm.
Buddhist ultimate happiness is only achieved when we overcome craving in all forms, which I mean, we will find commonplace in terms of the definition of happiness in several philosophies, religions, when they invite us to, to be courageous enough to go inside of, of us, knowing the self, thinking about something that is grandiose than just what we have and the
Mhm.
material aspects of life. And even when we are talking about the material aspects of life, happiness
Mhm.
will be completely different from my point of view than your point of view. Not completely be different, I say, but in many points. Even
Mhm.
if you think about something very simple, choosing a fruit of your preference.
Yep.
uh, the fruit that may be the fruit of your preference may be exactly the one that I can't not eat at all, and that I really don't like it. And this is going to be an unhappy event if I have to consume this fruit by any chance. So, and according to our maturity, and here we are not just talking about spiritual maturity, which is obvious, but also about our physical, development. So, what represents happiness for a child, feeling safe in the household with, uh, parents. And people around them, not necessarily is going to be the same.
Yeah.
And of course, we know it's not going to be the same when we become adults.
Mhm.
In terms of other philosophies, and even, in terms of spiritism that we talk about as well, is the understanding of this kind of progress, understanding what we are here. And this is this kind of, broadening our perspective is actually what brings us happiness, especially when we are thinking about the loss of loved ones. One
Yeah.
thing is for us to think about the loss of a loved one, which is a very unhappy situation,
Mhm.
thinking that they are lost from us for forever, And another thing is when I think that no, they're just in a different dimension, and soon enough we are going to be together, and we'll have the opportunity of having new experiences together.
It's absolutely critical for us, right? How we deal with those losses as well. So thanks for bringing that up. I think also if you put from a material perspective, Josara, it's interesting for us to think that that happiness is considered the central focus, as I mentioned before, for what we want to achieve in life, yet it is so elusive, right? Can we say everybody in the planet is happy? No, not at all. We are all pursuing it, but very few of us are able to say, I'm happy. And from that cultural, and we talked about Buddhism, we talked about other types of religions, Christianity, etc. We have definitions, but it's really important for us to acknowledge it is hard to achieve the goal of becoming happy. And often we confuse the idea of I am happy, right, with the idea of experiencing pleasure, whatever that is. So it is um, misconstrued, mischaracterized, and Joanna de Angelis, as the source of our study today, says it is the reason why most of us become frustrated and tormented when we cannot find happiness when we do everything we think is right, meaning all the material types of things that we, illusory things that we think are the source of happiness. So, also, just before I go back to you, it's important for us to think that there is a cultural element. For example, as you said, child, adult, but also if I am raised in a certain family with a certain type of discipline or a certain type of ethnic, cultural background, my ideals for happiness will vastly different from somebody from a different place, a different background. So, from that perspective, the idea of happiness, the vision, if you will, of what it is to be happy is somehow perceived to be distorted simply because it's defined so differently. It is relative, it's not absolute as we know it. So when we have it all there, it's I call the soup of definitions of happiness. We have another dimension, which is it's really a Western definition of happiness, and it's relatively new, the idea that we all, Jussara, we all must be happy in order to be happy. We must demonstrate a sense of comfort and happiness that if we don't, we are failing. So, from that perspective, it's important for us here, as we're talking about this topic, to understand that unlike what the media, right? Social media or larger, different types of media outlets define happiness. If you're not happy, it does not mean there is something wrong with you. This is a wrong conclusion, and it is important for us to start this conversation with this notion. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to be happy because happiness is a continuum. And I think, Jussara, you're going to talk a little bit more about those types of happiness and ranges of consciousness, right, and maturity. So I wanted to give back to you an opportunity to talk more, but I was thinking, Jussara, what in your mind, what are the components that will lead us to be happy?
Yeah. Uh, I'll go. I'll get there because you. I mean, you mentioned so many interesting things, and
Hmm.
one of them, while you were talking, was I was thinking about the persona and all this that you said, that we have to present ourselves in a certain.
Hmm.
So it's we go with the fake till you make it.
Yes.
But the thing is, sometimes we are so used to fake it, right?
Yeah.
To put this persona that we do not realize that behind this person, oh, now I have to present myself like this, I
Yeah.
have to be like this. There is happiness because I have a concept of happiness that doesn't necessarily translate into happiness. And
Yes.
maybe it's there and I'm not paying attention to it because we take for granted so many things, right? When Jesus said happiness is not of this world, it's something that I see so many people commenting about it, just saying, oh, don't expect to be happy because happiness is not of this world. This is not what Jesus was trying to tell us, especially because he came here
Hmm.
exactly to lead us to a path of happiness, to a
Correct.
peace. And so saying is not of this world, meaning is not of the things made in this world. And for
Hmm.
that, I would like to refer to question 922 from the book, The Spirit's Book,
Hmm.
codified by Alan Kardec. And then he asks the question for the spirits, and is there a common standard of happiness for all? This question is amazing, and the answer is brilliant. And
Hmm.
spirits reply, for material existence, it is the possession of all that is necessary. So the common standard of happiness in terms of material existence, the material aspect of life, we will say that it's possessing.
Hmm.
But here the spirit says it is possessing what is necessary. Because since we are material beings, we do need material things to provide
Correct.
for us.
Hmm.
So for happiness, in terms of material existence, is the possession of what is necessary. And for the moral life, it is a good conscience and faith in the future. Good
Love
conscience.
it.
We talk it so much about that in other episodes, and are going to be talking about it again, how much peace of mind, us knowing that we are trying to to be righteous, right? And then not expecting others to do the work. We have to do the work ourselves, right? And
Hmm.
this faith in the future that goes along what we said before in terms of having faith in the future, having faith that if I couldn't reach this goal now, it doesn't mean
Hmm.
that I cannot tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 500 years from now, right? Three distances after this one. So
Uh-huh.
this is I think it brings joy, it brings happiness to us, but then again it's a matter of us being willing to open our minds to this idea, to all this spirituality. I was recently watching an interview that Jung gave to a journalist,
Hmm.
there is when the journalist asks him, this bright man that possesses so much wisdom and knowledge in different areas and aspects of life. And when he asks him about his belief in God, he says, yes. But then the journalist says, but even now, even today, like saying, now that you are so smart, have accomplished so much, 84 years old, you still believe in God. And he says, it's not a matter of believing. I know. So if we allow, this inner voice inside of us to manifest this, I
Oh,
know I'm an immortal being. I know I'm, just starting this journey. I think this is going to improve so much the level of happiness that we will feel. And this is what it's all about, happiness, it starts inside of us.
I thank you. Thank you. This is awesome. And for those who may not have caught Jussara, the interview was with Carl Gustav Jung, right? The very famous um, psychoanalyst. And Joanna de Angelis books are mostly Jungian in terms of psychology. So very, very good for you, Jusada, to bring that interview to us. Um, I wanted to say something maybe here, back to the material, right? Question 922, Allan Kardec asked, and we are giving the idea there is a moral happiness and there is a material happiness, perhaps. And I want to give a little bit of a slant, which I alluded to earlier in our conversation, which is the idea that we somehow dream that happiness is, and dream is, it's really a dream in terms of an illusion of how we are brought up. And this is the majority of us, Jusara. So we dream of this, oh, everything is rosy, meaning I don't have any problems, right? Oh, everything is so wonderful. I have all the comfort that life can bring you to us, which is the material possessions. And then, of course, there's a third component is I want to rest. I want to be idle. I want to not work. And I want to be powerful, however power is defined in a given time and context. And and we really understand. I think it goes back to what Buddha said, right? If we only enjoy our sense of well-being, and if we only have a sense of gratitude for what we have, all of these things that we think that are important are no longer, they crumble down into the definition of happiness, correct? And the first thing is to know that the rich, the wealthy, the powerful, um, they may have the life of what I just said, all right, with power, with comfort, with time, but it does not mean they are happy. In I would even say in many cases, we may see individuals that attain all of it quite bored, quite uninspired, and let's say maybe I may have happy moments that are attached to a material possession, right? But you and I know this. We end up going very fast into, wow, I got the car. I remember as a young woman when I got my first car. Whoa, I'm so happy. I got this car of my dreams, etc. But we know within 2 months we don't even think about it anymore. All right. So it really tells us that it's nice to get whatever that you're pursuing, but they are not the trigger for you to be happy, right?
Yeah, Marcia. There is a study that says that in the US, for example, they have studied that have measured happiness, and it
Mhm.
has not increased significantly since at
Mhm.
least 1947,
Yeah.
despite massive increases in wealth and income. And we are
Yeah.
talking pause a Second World War.
Yeah.
So uh, and they show the how little actually the increase in technology and wealth and in income has not had an effect. And
Yeah.
in terms of the studies for the for the from that we can find in the positive psychologists, they have
Mhm.
been asking what it actually makes people happy, and they say
Yes.
money, love, and health only affect our level of happiness by up to 10%. So the other 90% is not in money, love, and health. And
That's
we are
very important for us to
and
think about it, right? Yeah.
to that. I'm just paying
Mhm.
attention on the 10%. I don't value the 90%. Like I said before, we take
Yeah.
for granted when we say, especially if we're talking to young people, sometimes we say, oh, you're complaining about, let's say, a headache. Thank God you have a
Yeah.
head, right? Oh, come on, don't come with that. But yes, this is something that we have to acknowledge. The possibility, the physical possibilities that we have. Family. Even if sometimes they say, "Oh, but I have a dysfunctional family." Okay, but you have a family, and there are so many
Yes.
people that would like to have one and don't have, and would trade their position with you. Just to
Yes.
have a
Yeah.
loving member next to them, because we
Yeah.
know, we may have this struggle or problems with family members, but it's still, if asked if we would like them to be removed from my life, I think in the many cases we would say, no, no. It's
Yes.
not that I'm talking about, right? So I think, like you were saying, and bringing all this background that we have, all the possibilities that we have, we really have to start paying more attention to this noble
Yes.
sentiment that is gratitude.
Yeah. 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 So we can see as you talk here that happiness really has to do with who we really are deep within, right? So that the need for authenticity, right? And not what we the persona, right? What we want people to consider me to be. So it's very interesting when we talk about the difference between me, Marcia, and the Marcia that I'm desperately faking until I make it, trying to be. There is a delta. And a lot of time, our sense of happiness has to do with the how that delta between what I want to be and what I am now pushes me to acquire. So, for example, um, I want to be respected, and this is all fiction, right? So, I want to be respected. So, to be respected in my framework, I want to be a professor, respected. To be a professor, I need to have a PhD. Therefore, I need to go to school. Going to school is what's going to make me happy. Do you see the difference? And that's very interesting when we start to look at that, because as you said, Jussara, the fruit may not be the same. You choose, I don't know, what do you want to choose? Watermelon, I choose cherry, and we're completely different. And it really has to do with that sense of, in terms of personal definition of happiness, of where we want to move on to. But what Joanna brings to us as well as the idea that it there are phases of happiness, and I think you start to talk about it, Jussara, but I just wanted to tell what they are, and we can talk more, which is we go from sensory phase to a sentiment phase to that idealistic phase of our own psychological growth, right? So, sensory phase, think about the baby, right? The baby, the young child. And at that time, gratification ends in often in dissatisfaction once you get we receive what you're striving for, right? Which is, I want milk or I want to eat. And once I'm hungry again, I am dissatisfied. It's in that sense. It's has a sense of gratification, but there is a cycle when that is fulfilled and when you, um, frustrated, depressed, or anxious again. When we move on to that sentiment phase, we are now moving into the realm of feelings, but we're not there yet. So we confuse, and we're going to talk more about it, right, Josada? But we confuse the attainment of a feeling towards somebody else as the attainment of pleasure with that somebody else, and it may lead in a bad phase, to this sense of possessiveness, infatuation, jealousy, etc. In the last phase, which is that idealistic or transcendental phase, it's the search for self-discovery. Now, I want to spend a little bit more time here because in the end, this is what we're here to tell you what happiness is. It's all about this self search for your authentic self, no longer your persona. And in that, you go through a journey of self discovery that will lead to self realization, that will lead in selflessness, which usually is translated into charitable acts, into service, etc. And so, what we talk about here is, let's not be too harsh on ourselves. it What we define as our sense of being happy goes through phases, and those are maturity of your spiritual maturity and emotional maturity, but it changes to a point that is truly transcendental, and it has very little to do with things that have a monetary value, right? So from that perspective, do you want to talk a little bit more, Jussara, about what is to be happy?
Um, oh, while you were talking about, these
Hmm.
different phases, I was thinking about the sensory phase when we talk
Hmm.
about baby and how, what before was a source of amazement to us, really, enchantment. Like, a baby, the first time it touches something that is cold and, uh, trying to make a sense of, and then, let's say, feeling the pleasure of, tasting something that is cold or something that is raspy or warm, or, uh,
Hmm.
so the different surfaces. And today we don't allow ourselves to be amazed by that anymore. Like,
Hmm.
look at a beautiful sky.
Yes.
It's always there. I look at the sun, it's always there. I look at the stars, and I think we are hindering ourselves in this sense, because we're not giving ourselves anymore to this, to this feeling of enchantment. Uh, Even when we are talking to a friend, to a loved one, how beautiful it is that I have this person here today with me. We never know about tomorrow. So I was thinking that in terms of this kind of happiness, not only in terms of allowing ourselves to be amazed by things that are surrounding us, and that the achievements, the pat in the back that I need to continue going on, and this is a source of happiness. And one of the things that you mentioned in terms of the self-discovery, the work that we do in terms of realizing that it's not that my happiness doesn't depend where I live, what car I drive, what language I speak, or it's something that is very personal. I've been I move it quite a lot, and then live it in different countries and cities. And sometimes, when people are going to go through this experience, they come to talk to me about how was it, to go and live in a different place, and another country. And I say, you know what? It doesn't matter. What matters is how you feel. I make each place that I go my home, and I bring my emotions with me.
Yeah.
So, okay, there might be, different brands of, cleaning products or
Uh-huh.
that I have to learn, but I mean, I will be happy or not in a place depending on how I am. And in terms of another aspect that you mentioned, which is the altruistic values.
Yeah.
And since we are talking about the United States today as well, because
Mhm.
of happiness, there is a statement by Eleanor Roosevelt that she says, since you get more joy out of giving joy to others, you should put a good deal of thought into the happiness that you are able to give. So you see, sometimes we will find more joy in helping others than
Yes.
necessarily just being selfish, right? Looking for things that are going to satisfy us, not thinking about others and the need of others. And I think
Beautiful.
it's beautiful, this thought by Eleanor Roosevelt, and how she share that with us in
Yeah.
terms, our happiness depend on that as well.
Yes. Yes. We're getting close to our end. Time goes by so fast. And I want us to move a little bit when we talk about it, about happiness. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we, when we talk about the phases you mentioned, um, it would be important for us to also understand that transcendental, that idealistic phase is out there, right? Far from where we are now. But between now and there, Jussara, we need to consider several things. And one of the things that I wanted to bring here today is the fact that many people believe, and this is from a psychology perspective, right, that happiness has to do with the Freudian pleasure principle, right? And we talked at length of what was the principle he was talking about. But what I want to bring here to everyone, to you and to me as well, is that uh, while we may satisfy or may not satisfy the needs from a pleasure perspective, right? One Many time one will keep pursuing that as a way to not look or not feel pain, right? So I am, I don't know, trying to think here what would be a good example. Maybe my pleasure comes from jumping out of just hang gliding, not jumping, hang gliding, and the I'm seeking adrenaline because I want to feel something, some source of pleasure. But what I'm doing is I'm pushing away the potential feelings of pain by looking at myself, right? So it's important here for us to know that yes, pleasure is okay. It depends on your phases, and no pursuit of pleasure is only about 10% of what makes you happy. Uh, Not looking at yourself, hiding behind some sort of escapist activity will not prevent you from suffering, because we know pain cannot be avoided. It is a natural part of our evolution. It does not mean that pain equals unhappiness. And this is really important, right? Pain is simply a mechanism to push us to keep moving toward our own growth. So when we talk all this, we bring to us the notion of our ego, right, and ourself. And one of the things that I wanted to maybe for us to close here, Jussara, is to know that so long we consciously or not, right? So long we attach attaining happiness with satisfying the desires of my ego, we will not be happy. And we can keep doing it, but we will not. And this is basically because once that, however, whatever desire is attained or reached, then I become attached to it, and it becomes the source of my frustration or of anxiety. Right? I'm afraid there is a whole lot of science behind this idea, and it's what leads retail to prevail in a capitalist world that we live in, but not part of our discussion today. But right, so we want to do something and we attain. It's ephemeral, it goes away, so you want some more, and that leads to a source of pain, even when we don't want to feel pain. And by not wanting to feel pain, I keep pursuing uh, artificial pleasures, material pleasures. Ooh, it's a lot of stuff.
Very important what you said, because it's exactly that. When we are just living in the ego, we don't even acknowledge that there is a self, or I'm not interested, because every time I try to go there, it is painful. And when it's painful, I look for escaping mechanisms so that
Yes.
I don't have to deal with what is there. I don't remember his name, but I have a quotation from I think he's either a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Sorry, I don't remember his name, but he said something that the human beings are the only animals that look for danger on purpose. So when we think about that, it's
Mhm.
horrible. He
Yes.
said,
Yeah.
look at nature. Animals do not go looking for things that can put their life in danger. I mean, yeah, they have to hunt because they have to survive, and so they have to risk themselves. But it's just because of surviving. It's not like us, go paragliding and other things, because I just I'm looking for escaping mechanisms so that I
Mhm.
don't have to deal with my feelings, with my emotions.
Mhm.
So, in this way, is like, I try to fill the void with things that are not going to be lasting, and
Mhm.
is not going to prevent us, from making this journey. And so the thing is, the sooner we do it, the sooner we acknowledge that, the sooner we will see that it's so much easier for us to satisfy ourselves than the ego, because the ego is like a non-stop demanding,
Yes. Yes.
very demanding, because like you said, as soon as I acquire something, there is something else, there is something else, because it's empty. It doesn't fulfill us. It's like, when you are eating something, for the sake of eating, but you don't feel happy because it was not a tasty meal or something like that, right? I mean, I think we can relate with that. So
Yes.
yeah, um, ego is complicated.
Ye- Yes. The good news is, as we mature, and we all do, that's a fatality, right? Fatality, not a death, but fatality. It is a
Heard that.
something that cannot not happen to you. It's our destiny. As we mature spiritually, our egoic desires, all of them, right? So it doesn't matter what you are and how much you push away other desires besides the egoic desires. As we mature, they will give way to spiritual aspirations, right? Those spiritual aspirations will lead to the need for a deeper search within ourselves, and this, my folks, is the road to self discovery. It is the road to happiness, which is, we spent the best about 40 minutes, 45 minutes talking about, but this is how we get there. It is having the strength to grow, and inherently, as you mature, you will need to look inside. You need to go through this path of self discovery. So,
Hey,
Jussara, are we ready? Are we ready for that?
just gonna say that it's not just a matter of maturing, spiritually speaking, because sometimes people that may be hearing us are not that much into it, and just
Uh-huh.
maybe we are stirring their curiosity in learning more. But even in terms of psychological maturity, because
Hmm.
how many people we know that are in their 40s, and we say, psychologically speaking, they're barely touching their teenager years. So it is a psychological maturity in the sense that we meant, that we talked about, in realizing that there is more to it than just the life dedicated to the ego, but also, of course, the spiritual perspective that will even show that there are new horizons for us to explore. So stay tuned with us, and until next time.
I know this is awesome. I love our discussion today. There's so much more, but I wanted to say, in the pursuit of happiness, there's plenty of information out there. We mentioned to you several books, right? The Conscious Being. There's a little book called "Wake Up and Be Happy." The title says it all. And of course, we also have Finding Peace and Health, which is a gem, and we're going to use it further next time we meet. But until then, hope you have a wonderful week. And thank you so much, Jussara, for being here with me today.